to another Solidarity is Brewing call. Today our topic is Striketober 2 PSL, which is hashtag pumpkin spice labor this year. We have some awesome guests. We have a lot of our Texas comrades here, so it's both Striketober and Yolidarity time. So this is going to be a really good call. I'm really excited. We'll just give a few minutes for people to um, join the call, and then please, we are recording our call today. So if you need to, feel free to turn off your camera or change your display name if you need to, but otherwise you can also feel free to add your pronouns and your chapter location in the chat. We'd love to hear where you all are joining us from. Oh, very cool. We have folks joining us from all over. Um, Amanda, do you want to hit next slide and we'll talk about what we're talking about today? Okay, so we're going to start off with our community agreements, and then we'll talk about what the Solidarity Brewing campaign is. Honda Wang from the DSA Labor Steering Committee is going to be talking about Striketober and the DSA Labor Solidarity Fund. G from St. Louis is a barista and organizer and is going to be talking about their organizing and also a strike that they recently had. Serena is joining us from Houston DSA and the Teamsters Local 988. And then we have DA Smith also from Houston talking about submitting a resolution to his union about supporting Starbucks workers. And then our staff organizer, which is awesome that we now have a DSA labor organizer, Amanda Cavazos Weems, is going to be talking about a awesome upcoming series from DSA Labor, Labor 101. And then we're going to talk about how we can all support Starbucks workers. And then at the end, we'll take all of our questions. So our community agreements, next slide, is the goal of these calls is to support Starbucks workers. We're here to support the workers, not direct them. And these meetings are open to all. So treat this as you would any public meeting and discuss things as you would at a public in-person meeting. Please assume good faith in each other, encourage yourself and others to maintain a positive attitude and honor the work of everyone. Step up, step back, be mindful of time, respect people's pronouns. And then if you have any questions or would like to speak, type stack in the chat and we're going to do Q&A at the end. Next slide. So the goals of the campaign, again, are to support workers. Nothing should be done for the workers without the workers. This is a really exciting time, and we all want to support workers, but we can only do that by talking with them and getting their consent for whether it's an action or supporting them when they have events and actions going on. Talking to workers is very important. And if you need help getting a point of contact at an organizing committee or at a store, you can always reach out to DSA Labor. So next slide. We talk about this every week and it looks a little different at different stores, but the timeline of events is really important to think about because what people outside of a workplace can see can be very different from what's going on at the workplace. But the most important thing is workers building relationships with each other, building trust. And then an organizing committee or an OC forms and starts organizing with their coworkers. Workers sign cards and submit those to the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board. Starbucks, especially in the beginning of the year, was trying to delay organizing um, by having these pre-election NLRB hearings where they were saying that stores had to file as a district rather than as a store. They're not doing that as much anymore. And then what happens is the NLRB gives an election date. Most elections are done over, most elections are done with mail-in ballots, but some are done in person. Um, and then hopefully the union wins, but the bargaining can take months or years, and Starbucks is trying to delay as much as they can. So it's really important that the support that we give is consistent and, for the long haul. And that's why we do these calls. So I'm going to turn it over to Honda, and he's going to talk a little bit about Striketober 2021.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to all the comrades that will come out tonight to join us for this call. I think we've all noticed a bit of a change in the weather. There's a bit of a change in the climate. There's a sudden cold chill running down the spines of corporate America, and that's because the season is now becoming Striketober. Last year, if you weren't aware, there was a massive labor upsurge among workers who have had enough of being exploited. Workers from across the country, from Portland to New York, from Massachusetts down to Alabama. I think workers from Kellogg's, Nabisco's, Hunts Point, John Deere, IATSE, Starbucks, Amazon, and Bessemer, they all rose up and captured the attention of the American public. The labor struggle that they started last year during Striketober brought labor militancy into the public consciousness in a way that has not been done in recent memory. And I think it was a really exciting moment for us because I think it marked the resurgence and the rebirth of a new labor movement in America. I think it is in large part what led to the foundations for the militant action that we're seeing in many Starbucks stores across this country, because they saw these workers go on strike and they saw them win. And I think DSA chapters across the country played such an important role in supporting these workers in their struggle. I think crucially with labor solidarity, what makes it so special is that workers are fighting capitalism at the heart of their exploitation, at the site of their exploitation, which is the workplace. And when they are able to win these struggles, they are able to see for themselves the power that they hold in their own hands as workers. And fundamentally, that is the power that we draw from as socialists to power the fundamentally transformative changes that we want to make in our society. It is only through the power of the working class, when acting collectively, are we able to overcome the elite interests of the capitalist class that has entrenched itself so deeply, not just in the state, but in our society. And so when we saw these workers rise up, we were there to meet them, we were there to support them. And I think as DSA, we were able to re-energize our own labor organizing as an organization. We had some really great successes with EWOC in terms of new organizing. We've had dedicated comrades who are rank and file members, who are rank and file workers, industrializing into strategic sectors. And then for the broader organization as DSA as a whole, we saw a wide number of members participate in these solidarity actions, which I think made it possible for us to establish a program like Solidarity is Brewing to meet the needs of Starbucks workers who are organizing and unionizing across the country. And so Striketober means so much, and we want to keep this going. And we can go over to the next slide, which is why we started the DSA Labor Solidarity Fund, which is going to be a central resource for DSA chapters to draw upon when they are engaging in labor solidarity work. Crucially, we know that DSA chapters want to organize, they want to do this labor work, but maybe they don't either, maybe they don't have the funds, maybe they don't have the organizing know-how to do that, which is why we created both the solidarity funds and the body which administers and operates it, the DSA Labor Corps, to make sure that can happen for every chapter across the country, regardless of their size, their status, their capacity. And so if you think that you want to get involved, you can go to laborsolidarity.com and you can either donate. We really need more recurring donors to ensure that this is a sustainable fund for DSA chapters down the line. And we also need your organizing expertise. If you have participated in labor solidarity work, if you have done anything in terms of labor organizing, if you believe in supporting workers across the country and want to be an active participant in this, you can go to laborsolidarity.com and go to the menu where you can sign up and enter your information in the interest form so we can allocate you to the correct subcommittee of the Labor Corps, whether that is as basic as social media comms or as in-depth and detailed as on-the-ground organizing with chapters. All of the above, we want to ensure that we encompass all the labor solidarity work that DSA chapters can do and want to do. And so thank you so much for having me on the call. Please visit laborsolidarity.com, become a sustaining donor, become a member of the Labor Corps, and let's make this second Striketober event that we're having this Sunday happen as well. Once again, we have another call, not just this call, but also a Striketober anniversary call this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, which is going to feature DSA members, worker leaders, and more. And we'll also give people more information on how to get involved. We'll be giving away free prizes and swag during that call as well. So be sure to sign up. I'll be dropping the link in the meeting shortly.
Amazing. Thank you, Honda. And I think the puppy agrees. Striketober is really exciting. So on our next slide, um, we are going to see some folks from St. Louis Starbucks Workers United. So I'm going to hand it off to G from St. Louis to talk a little bit about their strike and their organizing.
Sure. Aisha, are you going to play the video first? Or
Oh, yes. Could you press play, Amanda?
Anyway, yeah. Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm G. I'm from St. Louis. Yeah, that is my store. We're the first store in St. Louis to file, to win our vote, and 2 Saturdays ago on this 24th of September, we were also the first store in St. Louis to go on strike. We did like a walkout. It was kind of planned, but we wanted to make it look good, and there was other strategies, so we decided to walk out, and that's the TikTok video that we posted of us walking out. Some of you might have seen it. It did some numbers, so that was really cool too. Yeah, I had bought some sunglasses for something else, and I was like, hey, everybody take a pair, we're gonna put them on when we walk out. But I'm also a DSA member. I was more active in DSA back in like 2017, 2018. I moved for a little bit. The pandemic brought me back to St. Louis, and then I've been working at Starbucks for most of that time. And yeah, it was really great. Right when my store started organizing, I had been there for about a year, and we had a really great manager, and she left. And then right after that, we got new managers, and Starbucks started enacting a lot of the policies you might be familiar with across the country: hour cuts, labor cuts. They hadn't quite started introducing some of those benefits that Howard Schultz introduced when he came back, but those hit too, that the union can't get. So there was like a lot of things happening at Starbucks that caused us a bit of panic, and we wanted to do something about it. And because people in Buffalo had organized, we didn't just have to quit, because that's what you usually have to do. You have to just quit. So we had another option, and we started organizing. We won our vote back in June, and there's now 4 other stores in St. Louis. So it's really exciting. I'm fairly involved with the campaign nationally as well. It's really great. But as Honda was just talking about, DSA has been really, really instrumental in helping us get there. Um, we had a partner, somebody that works at Starbucks at another store that unionized, get fired. This is just a little story. Get fired way back over the summer, and we had a solidarity fund that DSA had set up, and it actually was able to pay her bills, like pay her bills for like 2 months straight while she was looking for other jobs. So that was like awesome. So like the work that DSA is doing, like, you know, and it's actually doing a lot of stuff. But yeah, also this is a picture of talking about Striketober last year. I obviously was a huge fan of it. I was following it from the beginning, cheering it on. This is a jack-o'-lantern I carved last year. So it's really fun that I carved that last year. And then, you know, I was a week shy of being in Striketober myself, but like leading a strike almost a year after that was like a really fun parallel. Just for myself personally. But yeah, so we went on strike. We decided we were going to try to do something that Saturday. And just the way things were happening, the union hadn't authorized it. We didn't know if we were going to get off the ground. We had called it off. And then Friday, it was like such a disastrous day at work. It was one of these things where I'm like, hey, we need to plan something. Like, clearly we need to strike at some point. And it was one of those things where everybody at my work was like, you know, I kind of like lost the reins, and everyone at my work was like, no, when are we walking out? Can we do that tomorrow? Can we just do it tomorrow anyway? And I was like, okay, fine. So I texted the head of the DSA here, one of the girls that used to be on the co-chair. And I was like, hey, I know I told you we're not doing it, but we're going to actually go ahead and do it. And she was actually able to mobilize some people. I think in one of these pictures, some of these people are DSA people. And I mean, the support was great. It was pretty small, you know, it was maybe 10 of us and at most maybe 10 other people. We did shut the store down because we walked out, so they didn't try to scab us or anything. That was really helpful. And, you know, it was just like about, you know, and it was fun too. I mean, you know, we got people were bringing us donuts. We ordered pizza for ourselves. There's some other activists. I actually found out that if I was at a book talk, here's a fun aside, I was at a book talk with Kim Kelly, the author, yesterday. If you know her, she just wrote a book on union history, and she cites this queer author who's written 2 books about like queer and trans labor organizing in the steel industry and then in the trucking industry. And I didn't know it at the time until I read it in Kim's book, but she was at her picket line. Her name's Anne, and it was super cool. She had a tattoo of her books, and that's the only way I was able to know. But yeah, so like we got really great support through that, and she came out through SEIU. So we had some other labor support there as well. But yeah, just the way that DSA was able to mobilize even very last minute probably made some people mad, but they still showed up. But it really made it really successful. Obviously we want to do something bigger, and we're, you know, still talking to DSA about that and thinking about how we want to accelerate. Oh yeah, you know, if we want to accelerate that, you know, they're going to help us with our next action as well. But yeah, this picture on the bottom, I'll end on this note. This is really cute. You'll see in the Starbucks shirt, that is a partner from the Hanley and Dale store, another store in St. Louis, who's also a DSA member. And him and some other DSA people were at a Jobs Justice conference in Jefferson City, our state's capital, and they sent us a group photo of like the whole organizing training to say that they were standing in solidarity with us because they couldn't be there on the day. So that was a really, really sweet moment for the strike. But yeah, so again, thanks for everything DSA does. Again, I hope that you guys want to get involved with your local store. DSA has been a huge help nationally to the Starbucks campaign, not just paying bills, but showing up and helping us organize. And also, like, you know, there's a lot of DSA members, myself, you know, the gentleman in this photo, you know, that were in DSA first, got a bunch of ideas in our head, and then when we were at Starbucks, kind of knew what to do when we needed to start organizing. So absolutely, Aisha, I'll hand it back to you, but I'll be here for questions if you guys don't know anything else just about how you can help the campaign, where the campaign's at. Fun update is we also do have our first bargaining date later this month, so for St. Louis, so that's going to be exciting.
Very cool. That is just everything that we like to hear. We like to hear that members know how to spring to action if they want to start organizing at their workplaces. We want to hear that chapters are able to come and support both in person and financially, and just building morale. All of these things are super, super important. So thank you so much for sharing. And I think we're going to have a bunch of questions for you. I know I have one. But up next, we have some folks from Texas. So first we have Serena, who is a member of Houston DSA, as well as a staff with the Teamsters local there. So I'm going to hand it over to Serena. And next slide, please, Amanda.
How y'all doing? Okay, can we get like a round of applause for the folks at St. Louis? It's like kind of snaps, claps. Yeah, let's go. We recognize real. So hi, my name is Serena. I'm from Houston DSA, formerly from Austin DSA, but I'm here to talk about our chapter's solidarity efforts with the Starbucks workers at the first store that just unionized in our great city, Houston. So just to give y'all like a little bit of a background of the store's organizing efforts. Back in July of this summer, actually, Shepherd and Harold's store in the Montrose area here in Houston went public with our organizing drive. And as soon as we saw that on the Twitter and everything, our labor working group was like, okay, we need to do a sip-in. At this point, we need to start like meeting. We need to start talking about how do we build relationships with the baristas here, because this is obviously really important, right? Labor runs the world, and obviously as a socialist, we have a responsibility to stand in solidarity with working class struggles everywhere, including in Houston, especially in Houston, deep in the red heart of Texas. So yeah, I guess like between the actual like election dates and the time that they announced, we actually hosted the baristas from Shepherd and Harold at one of our labor working group meetings, which is the photo on the bottom right hand corner of the slide, to talk about what's going on in the store. And we also had this nifty little magnet program where we actually had members of the labor working group and people that we reached out to sign up for little shifts, like come into the store and put these little magnets on the community board that says Houston DSA supports Starbucks Workers United. You can see that on the top right corner. And it was really great because we actually had like 300 of these printed out. I think we had like 2 posted pretty much every day in between the time that we started the magnet program and like, I guess like around September, the time of the election. And it was great because I'm sure it was like a little bit annoying for the store manager to have to try to take them down every time. And they were really nice magnets. So yeah, I think we hosted 2 different sip-ins in between September and July. One for Labor Day and another was just like around the time that Shepherd and Harold went public. And they were really great. It's not that we don't have pictures of it, but we had a huge turnout, mostly because we actually tabled at AFL-CIO Labor Day event and invited a bunch of union members to come in and show up and say hello to the baristas at Shepherd and Harold and show them that, you know, we're all in the same fight together as working class of Houston. And yeah, so on the left, we actually helped organize the election watch party for the baristas at Shepherd and Harold. We were able to get a big haul from our union siblings at IBEW. And so that's where the photos on the left side of this slide is. I should probably mention that with around the same week that the election count was, or the ballot count was set to be held, leader of the organizing committee, Joshua DeLeon, who is actually on this call right now, was unfortunately fired in retaliation for his leadership in this organizing drive. There's like an article out there that says Starbucks has denied firing Josh in retaliation, but as we all know, that's all talk. And yes, there's a GoFundMe currently out for Josh. Feel free to donate and share, of course. And he is currently fighting for his reinstatement. And oh, I don't know if we should go to the next slide. But because of this firing, especially within like such a short timeline between the election and that happening, the Starbucks baristas actually organized an unfair labor strike, one day fuel peace strike on the 1st of October. Honestly, like what a day to ring in Striketober for this year. And so the photos here are actually from that one day unfair labor practice strike. And it was really great. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend because I am also actually working in a store in the same district as a store. But yeah, no, it was really great turnout. And the way that we did it, actually, we of course followed the lead of the workers. The strike was actually publicly announced the morning of. But we kind of got information ahead of time. So we as Houston DSA, were able to text bank our labor working group members, our little list, and tell them, hey, there's a strike planned for tomorrow morning. Are you able to make it out? And we actually quickly set up a little form where the people we text banked could sign up for picket shifts. That way we could confirm attendance throughout the day. And as soon as the strike was announced on the morning of, we, of course, hit the ground running with our social media game, tweeted out the picture, retweeted, kind of like, we also had sent out a big old email blast to our entire chapter saying that the strike is happening, sign up for a picket shift, show up with supplies for the posters, bring food, bring friends. Of course, it was going to be a whole community thing. And yeah, it was really heartening to see that we actually had a lot of our union siblings from across town. We had IBW show up, IATSE. Honestly, some of them we actually met through tabling at that Labor Day AFL-CIO event. So clearly there's a lot about even just a one-day ULP strike that really is empowering to not just the baristas who are out on strike, but to labor everywhere. And talking to the rest of my union siblings, even with the Teamsters, they're really excited to see folks from Starbucks standing up and fighting for dignity and respect in their workplace, because their struggles are all the same. And so, yeah, I'm happy to answer questions about kind of our mobilization efforts. I want to say a big shout out to Quentin from Portland DSA and also with Portland Starbucks Workers United for some tips on labor solidarity efforts with Starbucks Workers United. But there you go, solidarity.
Amazing. This looks so fun. And thank you so much for sharing, Serena. We also, if Josh wanted to hop on, but sorry, Josh, are you cool with just chatting a little bit about the strike?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, sorry.
Awesome.
Yes. So I guess yeah, about the previous strike, yeah, as well as everything that Serena has already mentioned. A lot of the organizing for that strike, it was done by one of the other lead organizers in the store, Madeline. I'm not sure if she's on this call or not, but she played a big part in, I guess, like working with Ben Bennett and kind of delegating tasks for setting up the strike. And I think it went very, very well. I think everyone, all the workers at the store that participated, I mean, everyone participated, but not everyone, I think, was able to make it that day. Some people had some transportation issues, but yeah, no one showed up to work, that's for sure. um, but yeah, it went really well. And I think just the essential like nerves of getting the first strike out of the way, I think was very good, and I think it went over really well, and everyone will be much more confident, I think, going forward. I think me and Madeline also saw probably some things we could have done differently, and maybe because I think us and I think probably about 3 of us were there from like 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Other than like, you know, going home to eat lunch or something and coming back an hour later. So I think that was definitely could have paced ourselves a little bit better, or you know, kind of keep the energy up. At least for me personally, I was struggling the last couple hours, but it was a beautiful day. I mean, and there's a terrific turnout. I think it was really great for all the workers at the store to see the support from the city, even whenever it was a very busy Saturday within the city with other events and I think there's a few other like union events like around the city that were going on. So even despite that, there's still a lot of support and love shown to the workers at the store that day.
Thank you so much for sharing, Josh. And we put the fundraiser, but we can put it one more time. And I think one thing that, you know, if you're on from a DSA chapter that wants to just like hear more about how to support, that's another thing that chapters can do. If you already have a ride share chat in your Slack or something like that, like offering rides to people to come to the picket line is always very helpful. And up next, we have another member of Houston DSA who's going to talk about something that union members can do to support DSA chapters. So please welcome DA, and Amanda, if you can jump onto the next slide.
Hey, thanks. So I'm DA, he, him. I'm from Houston, and I'm a member of the National Writers Union. A few months ago, we learned that Starbucks Workers United had started a solidarity fund, basically a sort of strike fund that unions specifically could contribute to, not individuals. And Heather put out a sort of call through the National Labor Commission Slack for people to share any resolutions that they might have written in order to support that solidarity fund. So I went ahead and decided to do the same thing, do just that for the NWU. So the National Writers Union is fairly small. I want to say it's about 1,200 people nationwide. We don't have locals. Organizationally, it's very spread out. So it doesn't really function like a lot of typical unions. That actually worked in our favor for this particular resolution process, because I served as a delegate to our last delegates assembly, so we're on a number of different listservs and everything. So conversation between union members is pretty easy and regular and runs the gamut of topics. So it wasn't too hard to bring up the idea of a resolution to donate a certain amount of money to the Starbucks Workers United Fund. It also doesn't help or doesn't hurt that Daisy Pitkin, who is the, I believe, national field director for the Starbucks Workers United campaign, is an NWU member. And so everybody's sort of familiar with her work, including as a writer. And one of our fellow union members had already, I think in January, written a resolution supporting the initial sort of wave of Starbucks unionization. So as a union, we were sort of the membership was already sort of primed for supporting the Starbucks campaign as a whole. We'd also voted to donate money to the UMWA striking workers in Alabama last year. So this is a pretty standard practice for the NWU in my experience. So I put together a resolution based on the one from January or February, just using similar sort of wording. Sent it out to the membership, got some input from people, and pretty quickly it was voted on. The vote was pretty informal, but basically anybody who was on the delegates assembly list and in leadership voted, and it was unanimous. So it was pretty painless. So despite the fact that the NWU is not really like most unions, I believe that this is something that anybody who here that's in a union could do without too much trouble. Now, whether or not your union leadership is going to make it easy is a different story. But I think that you could start by talking to fellow rank and file members, because I'm sure that plenty of them have thoughts on the Starbucks unionization campaign and would want to support it. And together you can put together a draft resolution. I'll share the one that I put together in the chat shortly, and then Heather also wrote one that I'll stick in there as well. And between the two of those, I think you can get some pretty useful language for the process. You got to figure out who to pitch the resolution to. That's probably going to depend a lot on your local's organization and maybe even on the international level. I don't know for sure. It's going to depend on your union. But presumably it's the sort of thing that you could bring up at one of your meetings and get it on the agenda somehow and then have it voted on. I wish I had more advice to help you with that part, but unfortunately I don't. One of my fellow Texans in Austin managed to get his IBEW local to contribute as well. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the language of that resolution, and I don't know how the process worked, so I can't help out, unfortunately, with that either. So why should you do this? Obviously, you want to support Starbucks Workers United as best you can financially, because this is going to be a long haul battle and they need all the support they can get. Individual support is fantastic, but I think it's increasingly important that we pressure our unions to take up that struggle as well. Because there's a lot of everybody knows the rhetoric about, an injury to one is an injury to all. And unions like to talk about solidarity, but sometimes you don't really see it as much as you could. So this is, I think, a fairly simple and concrete way to get your union involved with other unions as a whole, just sort of the broader labor movement. It also helps mobilize union members individually, especially maybe those who might not be otherwise active. Because like I said, everybody's going to have a pretty strong opinion about the sort of righteousness of what Starbucks workers are going through right now. And rank and file members I would imagine, be pretty eager to assist however they can. In my experience with the NWU is definitely the case. And yeah, so linking your union to the Starbucks workers and the trade union movement as a whole is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be doing right now at this point when labor seems to really be on this upswing. And the stronger that we can make these connections and make it clear that everybody's struggles are not individual, but they're all interconnected in different ways, not just the fact that we're under capitalism, but just the sort of specifics of individual struggles. That will go a long way, I think. And unions have resources that we don't as individuals or even as DSA. I mean, they have pretty deep pockets, and we should take advantage of that instead of just letting that money sit there. And helping one another out is a pretty straightforward way to do that. So I don't really have a whole lot of other details, unfortunately, but like I said, I will share those 2 sample resolutions in the chat. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them towards the end. I guess the last thing I could mention was amounts. So like I said, the NWU is pretty small. We contributed $1,000, which for 1,200 member union is not a small chunk of change. So presumably members of bigger unions, I mean, there's, the Teamsters local here in Houston, for example, is 8 times bigger than my own union. So you could probably give proportionately or make proportionate contributions. So that's something to consider when you're writing up a resolution. You can always just, aim high and let the bureaucrats whittle down that number to something that you're hoping to actually get. But just keep that in mind. So yeah, that's about it for now. Like I said, I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll stick these 2 sample resolutions in the chat for y'all to take a gander at. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, DA. And I think if people have questions, you can also put them in, you can ask them tonight at the end of the call, or you can ask on the DSA Labor Slack. One thing that's also really cool to think about is everyone thinks of Texas as a conservative state and, how organizing in the South is harder. But tonight we're hearing about how IBEW hosted the watch party for the Starbucks workers for their election. I think the comrade that you were talking about, that IBEW local donated money. So there's so many ways for different unions to support Starbucks workers, and obviously coming out to the picket line. Invite your friends and your comrades and your coworkers and share the stories from these calls with them, because personalizing it also always helps. So up next, we have Amanda, who's going to be talking about DSA's Labor 101.
Yes, hi, howdy, y'all. Before we dive into the Labor 101, I want to take a smidge longer to just lift up the work of our comrades in Houston, especially all of this happened really fast, really pretty recently, and y'all really did the most. And I'm really proud that we're repping Texas in this way. And specifically I want everybody to think about passing a resolution in their union, or if you have comrades, asking them to pass it in their union as kind of a structure test, using our Jane McAlevey vocabulary words as a smaller level ask that we can use to measure our power as socialists in labor unions, and kind of see what our strength is. Maybe you'll discover, like DA, that you're totally capable of getting a resolution passed in your local and it's not anything that causes a lot of conflict, or you'll learn otherwise and kind of understand the internal union politics that exist within your local or your international. So try it out and let us know how it goes, because this is a bit of how we can measure our strength, working together. But all that being said, Labor 101. We're doing a training series because all of our comrades have said, labor is on the rise. We have new organizing at Starbucks, Amazon, Trader Joe's. The workers, they're agitated, they're riled up, and they're ready to organize. We've also seen our comrades win union reforms for democracy within Teamsters and the United Auto Workers. And unions are more popular than ever. They've had the highest approval rating in decades, especially amongst young people. So we want Labor 101 to not just be how to organize a union, but how do we as socialists think about the labor movement? How do we understand our role as socialists within the labor movement, so we can be best positioned to support and join the struggles of the working class. So join us for the 5-part training series starting Thursday, the 20th. We'll get to hear from comrades all over, and it's going to be a really educational event. And I look forward to seeing y'all there.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. And this series, Heather just posted the link to sign up. So we've shared this before, but if you have not yet, please sign the No Contract, No Coffee pledge. We want to make sure that people are showing that they do support Starbucks Workers United, but also it's a way for Starbucks Workers United to contact people if and when they need to. And then you can also donate to the Starbucks Workers United Coworker Fund, which is a little different than the fund that DA was talking about. So the fund that DA was talking about is specifically for unions to donate to, and it covers a portion of the wages that workers lose when they go on strike. This fund, anyone can donate to, and you can also set up recurring monthly donations, and it's a general national hardship fund for fired workers. And then on the next slide is the Adopt a Store program. If your chapter, your DSA chapter, or your union, or a different community organization that you're part of has not yet, they can sign up to support a store as an organization. So it's tinyurl.com/adoptstore. And then I think it's time on the next slide. We will talk about, Honda mentioned this, but next Sunday, DSA Labor is having the Striketober anniversary live call. It's going to be really fun. There's going to be workers from UAW, BCTGM, Teamsters, Starbucks Workers United, UAW, and DSA members and more. And there's going to be a raffle as well. So definitely hop on that. And then next, in 2 weeks, the next Solidarity is Brewing call, we're going to be talking about international solidarity. So same place, same time in 2 weeks. And Stack is now open for questions. So let's see I just want to see if we have any questions. So we have, people can ask questions of any of our guests. Yeah, Stack is open. Actually, while we're waiting for the first question, I'm going to ask a question of G, which is, how did you all prep for the strike? And how did you all have all those amazing signs ready to go for this walkout?
The answer to both is because I'm a loser with nothing better to do. No, but yeah, prepping for it, like I said, we were prepping. You know, it had kind of just been something we knew we needed to do. We had a sip-in that actually with DSA people that was really successful back in like April, and that actually triggered a ULP where my assistant manager threatened to send me home if I kept calling out drinks that were Union Strong, because like everyone was, you know, putting Union Strong as a name. That's like the whole fun of it. Yes, that's right, Frank. Yeah, so anyway, so that happened, and that was one action. And then in August, we actually did a March on the Boss. Just like the story of my story is that, you know, we're extremely busy. We're in an extremely rich neighborhood in St. Louis. It's like one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country. It's like, you know, St. Louis is very segregated, and this is where all the rich white people went. Anyway, so and there's a bunch of schools around it, so the school year really affects us too. And, you know, we used to, about a year ago, under my old manager, and again, this is all kosher Starbucks stuff. They try to tell us, oh, she was just doing this her way. No, they were approving it. It was how the store was running. But we used to have, I mean, literally twice, if not 3 times as many people on the floor at once as we have now. In fact, this past weekend, we had so many people either on vacation or out sick, on top of how staffed we are in general. We were running for like 3 days in a row, with like 3 or 4 people, maybe 5 tops, like on the floor at once. And I mean, we regularly do like over 100 customers every half hour in the morning. So I mean, it's chaos. You know, everything's filthy. We're running out of everything. People are skipping breaks. It's like really, really stressful. So it was just kind of reaching this boiling point. You know, we've also had a lot of people in my store quit. We've lost 30 people in the past 6 months. We used to have about 50 people on staff. Now we have less than 20. So, you know, it's like, and when you have less people on staff, it's you're always there. You're the one doing it, you know? So it's like, we are getting burnt out. We're feeling that. And we had a couple more people quit recently. And after a couple months where we didn't, and it's like, okay, if we're having people leave again, we need to do something, you know, like we can get burnt out, or we can reinvigorate ourselves, you know. And we knew that, you know, even some of our holdouts, some of the people that aren't very pro-union, were coming and saying, joking about, hey, we should all just leave, or joking about, hey, she just put in her 2 weeks, so when are we gonna strike about this, and stuff like that. Because a lot of these are basically constructive discharges. They're not even people quitting. They're quitting because they have to. Their hours got cut. Our labor got cut. Management isn't scheduling them in their availability. After we did our March on the Boss, I was doing clopenings every weekend, where I would leave at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'd have to wake back up at 4:30 the next morning. And so it's like I didn't have a Saturday night for like a month. So I mean, it was just in the air. We were planning an action. And that took a while, but that was just like talking to people about it, making sure they're comfortable with it. One of the best things that happened was we had a guy who has been a holdout. He's like, don't text me about this, don't call me about this, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to hear about it. He closed out the picket line. It was just me, him, and 2 other people at the very end, because our managers showed back up to close and they were just like waiting us out. And I was like, no, well, we got to stay the whole time. And I was like, and if you leave, we can't strike. So you gotta hang out. And he was like, let's do it. Let's order some more food. So like that, it's really incredible to see that. But we were planning it for a while, and so I went to school for art. So I busted, I got poster board laying around. I got markers and paints. So I was making some strike signs, and other people in my organizing committee started making some. And then we actually had some people that drew some there. I bought a bunch of just blank ones, and we had markers and stuff. I was telling Aisha earlier, we've kind of, I keep a strike notice in my pocket at all times at work in case where that says, what's the OP reciting? That's blank, so we can just go at any time. And we've just been ready for that for a while. So even though we did plan the walkout, it was something where we were prepped. I had a trunk full of signs and t-shirts. Somebody else had a trunk full of like tents and tables and chairs. Somebody else had a bullhorn. Somebody else had like water bottles. It was like, we were ready to go. And we're still ready to go, like after our strike, I was like, this is all just going back in our cars. I just printed a new strike notice, so if they try to retaliate, which I think they might, we're ready to do it all again. So, and it was fun too. That's the main thing, is like, it literally got to the point, I'm like, I was working 8 hours either way. So I'm like, I'm gonna be there all day anyway. I can be outside goofing off, or I can be busting my tail. I know which one I'd rather be doing. So yeah, so just like getting prepped takes a while, but the good thing about striking is like once you do it once, like somebody said about Houston, it's like once you get that first one under your belt, you realize your power, you see how it feels, you see how you can do it. You can do that again because you got nothing to be scared of.
Amazing. Yeah. If anyone wants to get off mute and clap, that's totally cool. Would anyone else like to answer the question of like, how do you stay ready for strikes? How are you strike ready at all times? I know, and even if you weren't a presenter today, if you're a Starbucks worker and want to talk about that.
I guess I'll get off mute and kind of talk about us being, I guess, strike ready. Honestly, a lot of what the mobilization effort was, I think, was like within like 36, 24-ish hours notice. So honestly, I think a lot of how we were able to pull it off was just like, okay, we have a list that we already have compiled of like people who attend our labor working group meetings. And as soon as like we got word that yes, we can like text our members, we're like, okay, we have a draft sort of like a text ask, and we just like with our like little signal group chat, like who's ready to text bank tonight, and we got a few confirmations. And basically it's a lot of like what do you all for at least like us being in DSA, we kind of we have this core group of like experienced organizers, and using the tools that we already have, especially like with our experience with like turning out for like canvases and whatnot, kind of doing the same thing but within a smaller time frame. And yeah, basically text banking, really important. And having a sort of tool that we can use to really confirm attendance for the picket line, also another important detail. And because we wanted to follow the lead of the baristas and not announce the strike until like the day of or when they were ready, making sure that we ahead of time had words drafted for whenever I guess the strike gets announced. And we also delegated people to do sort of like responsibilities on picket line, so to speak. I designated myself as like the live tweeter from afar, so we could get the word out on social media. And we had people on the picket line, like we really encouraged them to like take photos, take a lot of photos, and we sent them to our little labor working group chat. That way we could get it out on social media as soon as we get the photos, so it's all just kind of out there on the day of. So yeah.
Yes, helping document the day of is also helpful for baristas who are super busy taking care of everything along the picket line. Does anyone else have any questions or want to get on stack? Runal?
Hi, Ronald. I had a question. Kind of came to mind when Amanda was talking about structure tests and Jen McAlvey. I was wondering if any of the workers here did any structure tests, building up to a strike. And also kind of like a related question. I was wondering how y'all been handling inoculation, like how you've been, preparing your coworkers, for retaliation when you strike, things like that. But yeah, thanks.
Great question. Who would like to take a first crack at that question? G?
Yeah, I mean, I know at my store, yeah, like, the March on the Boss was really the first thing that we did. That was our main structure test. Because that's really what it's helpful for, it is a strike threat, more or less, and it is something that's easier to pull off in a strike. You only stop working for maybe 10-15 minutes as opposed to all day. And something Serena was talking about too that's really helpful is having those community supporters there is really great. This is unrelated, but I just want to say this because there's a lot of stuff where, like, at least like as far as like internal relationships goes, if not legal matters, it's really helpful to have a community supporter and not a worker do some things. Like when we did that March on the Bus, we had someone from DSA film. And that was really powerful because our bosses knew that they kind of had to respond well because if you saw that viral March on the Bus where the manager like walked out, and then there was that other one where the manager like said that she got kidnapped, like they see how social media responds to that. They're watching all of our Twitters, they know that like there is a public eye on how they receive this information. So that's really helpful too. But yeah, so like structure tests, like one thing that, like kind of sucks, but it's kind of good is, the fact that we do have such few people right now, it is easier to just keep in touch with people and kind of know who's talking to who. Our organizing committee is pretty good about like delegating out, like you talk to this person, I'll talk to this person. I know before the strike, I was really stressed because it was maybe I worked till about 2 o'clock the day before. It was really chaotic. And then about 3 o'clock, we had a meeting where we decided, okay, we're going to walk out tomorrow. And then from about 3 o'clock to about 11 p.m. I was like, I tried to go to the grocery store. I had to call like 3 of my coworkers like in the parking lot, so it was, I know I was trying to touch base with people, talk to DSA people, talk to whoever. There was still a lot I forgot to do, and other folks were making brochures and stuff like that and figuring out, other components to the strike that we need, buying snacks, stuff like that. Sorry, Renal, what was your second question? Just how did you organize that? Or
no, my second question is more on inoculation. Like, how did you prepare, like your coworkers, for any retaliation from your bosses, when you go on strike or when you did the March on the Boss?
Yeah, I guess another thing on that note too is we had sent out a survey at our store before the strike, which kind of said like, what actions are you comfortable with taking, and it was like even included like what issues would you walk out over, and stuff like that, or like, do you want to strike soon? Do you want to strike over like a past ULP? Will you only strike over like a future ULP? Like some specific questions like that, and they all came back pretty positive. So like, we use that survey to like have those conversations, in a big way. But I mean, also just like, at least on my end, we're at the point where we all know each other. We know where we're at as a store. And we're, you know, like I said, I was just calling people the night before and being like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what's going to happen, you know? And when we talked about the March on the Boss and stuff like that, you know, doing debriefs after, you know, following up with folks, being able to say, you know, here can be our next steps. Here might be what happens. You know, we have seen some retaliation both after the March on the Boss and the strike. They're playing it pretty mild. They're trying to go after us over our t-shirts. But like one of my coworkers has received a written final warning for wearing his union t-shirt. So like, you know, we're preparing what to do in the event that they escalate from there, you know, and being ready. So, and just like, you know, just like having those conversations and those connections, especially if we do in the rare event, we get a new hire, you know, we just got one and I've met with him a couple times over coffee and just talked about where the store's at, where the union's at, stuff like that. What we might need him to do or not do, you know. So, I mean, it's just about keeping in touch with people, really. So, I mean, and again, this is all taking place over like 6 months. So we have that on our side as well.
So, wow, that's really great to hear. I mean, just constant conversations with your coworkers too is so important. Would anyone else like to add to what G said, or to add to answer any part of that question? Does anyone else have any questions? I know we're right at, it's like 9:02, so it is time to maybe wrap up. I have one final question and anyone can answer it. So last year, obviously Striketober was in October. This year with the Starbucks campaign, in the spring, there were lots of sip-ins, and that's obviously continued throughout the year. A lot of the strikes happened over the summer. It's getting a little colder. Does anyone have like advice for chapters that are going to do strike support, or for workers that are going on strike in the colder weather? G?
I have an answer. I'm saying that's really important.
Okay, so stock is open for anyone to share tips. Honda?
Yeah, one of my first strike actions with DSA was supporting Teamsters Local 202 during the Hunts Point produce market strike, which was in the middle of January. I don't know how many Starbucks will let you light burn barrels in front of their stores, but in lieu of a burn barrel, I highly recommend hand warmers, a lot of hand warmers. They're very cheap, easy to get, easy to distribute. Always wear layers. Ensure that you have the ability to take layers off if you sweat too much, because that is a problem during the winter. And third is something really easy to do is just to get an insulated Cambro or insulated like coffee keeper, so you can always have a hot beverage on hand. One really great thing that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did for the Local 202 strike was that she actually brought hot chocolate to the strikers. And so it's a great way for local public figures to get involved and to get them to pay for things and bring them to the picket line. So if there's any sort of progressive forces in your local area that you can get to come down to the picket line, bring hot coffee, bring hot chocolate, etc. I highly recommend you do that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, one of those strikes that happened a few years ago in 2019, UAW was on strike across the country. And in Bucks County, they had like a lot of space that was like outdoors. So some of our chapter members helped them like chop firewood, and we brought firewood to it. So I think it's important to maybe, if you're a DSA member, talk to the local store about like if they have, if they, just talk through like what does the location look like what can you do, what can't you do probably there. And the hand warmers suggestion is really great from Honda. So would anyone like to answer the question about salting, getting a job at a store with the intention of organizing? Shay, would you like to talk a little bit about your experiences?
Outed myself in the chat. Hey, comrades. Yeah, I'm in Cleveland. Last year, coming up on a year, when Buffalo was coming up on their vote. I'd been contacted by someone I knew at Workers United, and I was just finishing up some nonprofit work that was quite unfulfilling. Go figure. And he was just like, "Hey, do you want to meet someone in the organizing committee at the store that's actually just down the street from you?" And I was really excited to. This person in particular had already gotten in touch with a few people from our DSA chapter, so we were linking up kind of immediately. And yeah, it's not an easy job. It is the hardest job I've ever worked for the lowest pay that I've ever received. Go figure. But I will tell you that I'm a union member now. It was not easy. We had pretty intense union busting at our store. At least from when we filed, we were at our count was 16-6, and by the time that we had our vote, we were at 11-9. So the manager did a lot of work on our members. So I just want to say it is not easy, but it is fucking worthwhile. And I'm just really just inspired by the comrades in St. Louis and Houston. Y'all are doing the work, trying to learn something from y'all right now. And yeah, salt if you can.
Serena, would you like to talk a little bit about your experiences working there?
Yes. So I actually currently work at the store that's in the same district as the store that just unionized. I'm Trevor and Harold. My store is Richmond Woodhead. And yeah, I think I'm about like a month in, and honestly, I love my coworkers. I've actually during the past 2 weekends in a row, I've like been out partying with them. So it's like we're like a little family, and it's I think really the only thing that makes me like really look forward to working at Starbucks. I worked in the service industry before, and honestly, Starbucks is nothing like any of the places that I worked before. There was like so much pressure to kind of follow this like assembly line of things, and there's like a lot of like metrics, surveillance type of things going on across the store that I was never really used to. So, for example, a really big thing that I noticed was like if you're in a store with a drive-through, you actually have this like screen in front of you that tells you how long people are waiting in the drive-through line and how much time they spend at the window. And if it reaches like a certain threshold, or like they're waiting like a few seconds too long or something like that, it like turns like yellow and red and all of that. And if your drive-through times are like not that great, at least in my store, they're like kind of forgiving. My shift supervisor is like totally understanding, like, you know, like sometimes we get backed up on warmer, or like sometimes the drink gets messed up, or like people like ask for extra things at the window. It's like, okay, but when the manager is around, there's like, you know, extra pressure to like make sure that we have our drive-through times all right, and making sure, and on top of making sure things are restocked, and also on top of having to deal with less than pleasant customers. So it is a really tough job, and certainly, especially so, my experience also, we're considered a high volume store, so we do get a lot of customers throughout the day. So there's kind of that additional pressure on us to make sure that we get through the day's volume within a good amount of time. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. So it is 9:10, so we probably should wrap up, but I think what we heard was that it's really important to be a good coworker first and foremost, and that this job is really difficult, but it sounds like it's very much worth it, like Shay said. So if you're thinking about it, definitely reach out. If you want to get connected to Starbucks Workers United in your area or with a Workers United rep, you can also reach out to DSA Labor. So I hope I will see everyone next Sunday for the big Striketober live call. It's going to be really fun. There's going to be a raffle going on throughout. So I'll see you there. Have a good night, everyone. You can get off mute if you'd like to say good night.
Thank you, comrades.
Later, y'all.
Solidarity.
Bye.
Bye.
Solidarity.